Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic, where I thought today we might take a look at another of these historic Nickly.com puzzles before they disappear forever. So unfortunately Nickly.com, for those of you who aren't aware, is closing down as a website, and therefore there are no new puzzles there anymore. But over the years, and it's been many years, there have been some phenomenal puzzles, all hand designed, and this is one of their championship puzzles. So this is an extra hard difficulty, it's the hardest thing they would publish. And the winning solve of this puzzle, which I think appeared on Christmas Day in 2015, was by a solver with the pseudonym BSKBRI. Now, I know a lot of the best solvers' pseudonyms, and I don't know this one, so I can't give you any more information about who they are, except to say that they are obviously a phenomenally quick solver. If you win a Nickly.com puzzle championship, you've beaten several thousand other puzzle enthusiasts, some of whom are world champions at the discipline, so they are seriously good puzzlers. Now, in order, I think, to get the most out of a puzzle like this, you really do need to try the puzzle. So I would really recommend those of you who are serious about improving, do take a look at the numbers in the grid, see how you'd go about solving it. But an extra hard Nickly puzzle, that normally is a challenge. I think anybody who solves a puzzle of this difficulty in under 10 minutes is a seriously good solver. Now, I've gone through the solve of BSKBRI already, and one of the things I thought was interesting about it is that they use some very standard techniques, so the techniques we recommend on the channel. So what do I mean by the technique we recommend? Well, what we do is, if we can find a position in a 3x3 block where a number can only go in exactly 2 positions, then we would pencil mark it. So let's look at this 3x3 block, for example. You can see a 2 is limited to only these 2 squares. So we'd recommend putting a little 2 into both of these 2 squares. Certainly in terms of computer solving, also on paper too, but on paper you can be a little bit more elaborate. You might be able to add some extra pencil marks as well. But that core technique takes you an awful long way in terms of Sudoku solving. We've just had the World Sudoku Championship. You could actually watch the finalists solve, and although the quality of the video isn't fantastic, it's pretty clear that most of the finalists are using a technique that is very similar to this method. And if they're using it, we should be using it too. And what we'll see, I'm not going to go through the entire solve here, because I don't think it's necessary to do it. I've started to play it here. It's 5 minutes it takes this person to solve the Sudoku fully. But there are 2 or 3 moments in the solve where they use these pencil marks very elegantly, and I thought it would be worth us just studying those particular moments and try see exactly what they've done. Now the first moment is coming up now, so I've paused the solve. You can see that the solver in question is less than a minute into the solve. They've got 4 numbers in the grid and an awful lot of pencil marks, all using the method we recommend. And then we see the first bit of nice logic, I think. And the place we need to look at is column 8 here, and how that interacts with this bottom 3x3 nonet on the right hand side. So do pause the video now and stare at this and see if you can spot anything clever. And what our solver notices is the impact of this 4 and a 5. Now there's already a 7 pencil marked in here, so we know there's a 7 in one of these 2 cells. But look at the impact of this 4 and 5 now. The 4 and 5 can't go in any of these 3 cells, so they're forced into a choice of 3 cells. And in effect what happens therefore is that this cell, and this cell must be a combination of 4, 5 and 7 in some order. Don't know where they go, but we know there is a triple of 4, 5 and 7 in these 3 cells. And then we can use these 2's here. We've got 2 and a 2, so ordinarily the 2 could either go here or here. But because we know this is part of a 4, 5, 7 triple, the 2 cannot go in this cell. and this solver finds that point very quickly. So let's continue the solve now. You can see, so the first thing is they pencil mark 4, 5 here. And what they're doing is saying that they've noticed that this cell can only be a 4 or a 5. And that's because of the 4, 5 logic we've just discussed. And immediately they spot this 2 here. So the 2 goes in, that's going to give the 3 as well, because that's the nature of these pencil marks. Once you are able to eliminate one of the numbers, you know the position of the other pencil mark must be the true number. So the 2 goes in, that gives the 3 here. This will have to be a 1, because we know this is a 4, 5 and a 7 triple. And there we go. The 6, 8 pair is completed just to complete the column. And the solve proceeds from there. So a very nice spot there with the 4, 5 and 7 down here. Now the next point that I thought was interesting to note is a very common piece of logic that occurs when we're using this pencil mark. So here it is. You can see they've just placed a 3 pencil mark in one of these 2 positions. Now what does that mean? Well, that allows us to look at the interaction between this nonet and this nonet. So we know that the 3 in this nonet is locked into column 4 or 6. And in this nonet, the 3 is locked into columns 4 or 6. So columns 4 and 6 can contain no more 3s. It's impossible. If we were to, for example, posit that there was a 3 here, what would that mean? Well, it would mean this cell would have to be a 3, and this cell would have to be a 3. Clearly impossible. That would give us 2 3s in column 4. So there are no more 3s in columns 4 and 6. And let's look at how that affects this 3 by 3 block. No 3 here, no 3 here, no 3 here, no 3 here, and there's no 3 here either because of this 3. So actually we're able to write a 3 in here. Now, this may seem trivial to some of you, but for those of you who aren't used to this pencil mark notation method, it is very, very powerful. Most people who don't or haven't advanced to this sort of pencil mark technique will be writing in lots and lots of options into each open box. So they might look at this cell here and say, okay, well, this I need to put in the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 and 8. Okay, there's a 1 and an 8 here, so we're looking at 2, 3, 4 or 7 into this cell. And they might put 2, 3, 4 and 7 in their pencil marks into this cell. Do the same here, same here, same here. Now imagine if you had that sort of dense amount of information and we're trying to spot this pattern of 3s. It's incredibly hard to do, and that's why this briefer method of notation is so powerful. So let's see, they immediately find the 3 because that's what they're looking for. They're using this notation to force these sorts of deductions. Once the 3 is in here, this has to be a 3, and the solve continues from there. Again, nothing clever going on here. I thought this pencil mark was interesting, this 1, 2, 4 pencil mark. Let's just briefly analyse what's going on here. You might in the first place think, what they've done is exactly what I've just described, which is to analyse the contents of this cell and say, let's take a look at column 5, for example. You can see we need the numbers 1, 2, 4, 5 and 8. And we can see we have a 5 and an 8 here, so they've written the numbers 1, 2 and 4 into this cell as if they're the only numbers that can go into that cell, and therefore, you know, that's the sort of pencil mark method they've switched to because they've got stuck. I don't think that's what's happened here. I think actually what's happened is that this solver has looked at this 7 and this 7, and they've noticed that if we analyse the impact of those 2 7s on this block, then there isn't a 7 here, there isn't a 7 here, and there isn't a 7 here. So in effect, this cell, and this cell are a triple, again, on 3, 6 and 7. And therefore, I think this 1, 2, 4 has been written in just to remind this solver that these 3 cells are a triple on 1, 2 and 4 as the logical consequence of these 3 cells being a 3, 6 and a 7. And the reason I think that's probably what's happened is if we look at the pencil mark they place now, look at those two 4s go in. It's incredibly hard to see why you would pencil mark these two 4s unless you'd noticed this 3, 6, 7 triple. Because if we look at column 4 and ask ourselves what's going on, you can see there can't be a 4 here, but it's much, much harder to see why there isn't a 4 here or here to allow for these pencil marks. To make this pencil mark 4 entry into this 3x3 block, it basically means that they have undoubtedly understood this 3, 6, 7 logic, and that's why I think this 1, 2, 4 is notated here. Interestingly, this 4 notation doesn't completely crack the puzzle, although it does allow a new pencil mark 4s to be entered into these two cells. You can see because in this cell we've forced the 4s into rows 7 and 9. In this 3x3 block, the 4s are also forced into rows 7 and 9 simply because of the positions of the already entered numbers. So we know that the 4 in this 3x3 block must be in either this position or this position. And I think that'll be pencil marked as the next two entries, yes. But we can't use that fact. There aren't enough pencil marked 4s into these two 3x3 blocks to actually go further. And I think that the next important entry that's made is just there. There we see two pencil marked 2s go into this 3x3 block here because of this 2 and this 2. And immediately what the solver's doing is again getting the most value out of the pencil marks. So they've noticed the 2s here are forced into rows 1 and 3, and they've looked across and seen these two 2s here, again in rows 1 and 3. Therefore we know that the 2s in this block now must be in row 2. There can't be any more 2s in rows 1 and 3, and they've already done this logic on the 3, 6 and 7 anyway, so they know now this cell here will be a 2. And let's see how quickly they find it. Not immediately, but pretty quickly. Once this 2 goes in, this has to be a 1 and a 4, and the puzzle collapses quickly thereafter. So I really think that studying this sort of solve from an expert solver is really worth doing. As I say, I think they finished the puzzle in 5 minutes 15 seconds, very quick time, and undoubtedly a world-class piece of solving. So we're going to be back soon with another video on the World Sudoku Championship from last week. Definitely look out for that. That's going to be very interesting. And today the World Puzzle Championship also concluded, so congratulations to a friend of mine, Thomas Snyder, who actually has become the World Puzzle Champion for the first time, having been the World Sudoku Champion on 3 different occasions in the past. So yeah, we'll also do some videos, I think, on the World Puzzle Championship as well. So if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that, and we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.